It's always kind of scary sometimes because it's like, are you actually recording like I need you to? Okay, so I want to just start with a quick kind of snippet about GRO for, some of you who may not be as familiar. But GRO is a business initiative that works really closely with SBDC and the Columbia Economic Team. It is a business initiative that is sponsored by the Ford Family Foundation, which is the tree people, not the car people. There is a difference in Oregon. And GROW stands for Growing Rural Oregon. And it is a statewide initiative that involves about 4 counties. Well, Independence, Oregon, I don't know if that's a county, but Klamath, Tillamook, and starting with St. Helens into Columbia County. It's a 5-year pilot program specifically focused on helping to foster and build and collaborate around entrepreneurial ecosystem. So, we're very honored that we are chosen as, a pilot county. We get access to those resources and able to engage the community. So SBDC is really kind of the tent pole for everything small business, and then GROW kind of does just additional things to support. So on Saturday, we had, free headshots at the bazaar. All right, here we go. I'm just letting some other people in as they come in. At least I think I was. Like I did hit admit, not deny, right? I didn't see where they just went. We'll try that again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, joining. Okay. He's in process. Just give him a minute.
Meanwhile, I feel like there should be some Cabbage Patch dolls or something on those shelves behind you, Nicole.
I know, right?
Maybe some parents fighting over, I don't know.
What's a
What
hot toy now? Cabbage Patch was back when I was a kid, right? Like that was the
Turbo Man. Turbo Man's hot.
Turbo Man. Well, Chris can print some 3D toys for us. We can pop those on the shelves. All right, so let's see. David's joining, and then we'll have some other people. Okay, so GROW, there's a lot of different things that we're doing. We're working on just connecting with entrepreneurs and business owners. And there's access to different resources such as GROW loans. There's a technical assistance grant. You can find all of that on the GROW St. Helens website. And if you're not following us on Facebook, please do. Please also follow. Awesome, Angela. Oh, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was a really fun event. It was so great to connect with so many different types of people. So before we get started, I just want to share for a minute about this event series. So there are 5 classes. This is basically what we're referring to them. Thank you, Jason. There are 5 classes. Hi, David. We're just getting started kind of with a quick overview and we're going to jump in. So we started looking at kind of like all the bazaars and the makers, and we have such a disparate county. And there's so many incredible artisans that we have that may not be kind of in the public eye, right? And so we were looking at all of the makers at the bazaars and how many of them have either wanting to get into e-commerce or maybe just kind of have like Facebook is their e-commerce channel. And we thought, what can we kind of create to help people get some professional development to help them identify kind of an e-commerce strategy and understand what they need. And because it can be very daunting about knowing where to start or what's involved. And so that's why we decided to invest in this series. We got connected with Genevieve through Accelerate Portland, which is a large women's business networking group. And she has a tremendous amount of experience. Unfortunately for Genevieve, we were only going to do one class with her, but on our initial call, she said so many smart things. I said, "Oh my gosh, can we do a whole series?" So really, that is what this is. It is like a master class. Um, these are just a couple of statistics. Industry experts estimate 95% of all purchases will be through e-commerce channels by 2040, with over 90% of global internet users having purchased a product online. BigCommerce, which is an e-commerce platform company, forecasts 23% year-over-year growth moving forward. And yet 46% of American small businesses still don't have a website. So we just conducted a bunch of research in Columbia County, specifically looking at our local businesses, and there were two challenges that emerged that retailers face. Is a lack of population density in our rural to semi-rural area, and then aligning store hours and employees. We have a 73% out of area commute rate with residents. So commerce is definitely being done elsewhere. So e-commerce obviously can expand your customer base 24 hours a day, improve your market size, your brand, revenue capture, all of those things. So if you are a small business and you're looking to expand into online channels, or new distribution, like this is going to be the masterclass for you. So just really quickly, this first class is e-commerce basics. This is really like the philosophical questions. What are the things I need to ask myself to determine what I need? In the next class, which will be in January, we're going to start looking at sort of the next step, right, of developing out your brand and presence. So if you decide, hey, I kind of want to try this e-commerce and go through this series of classes. The second one is going to get more tactical, further down the funnel. What are you going to need? What do you need to think about in terms of your brand? Asking those kinds of questions. And then the third one, which will be in February, so it gives everybody time to learn, digest, and even start to develop your strategy. And your business plan to go with it. SBDC has some great templates that can be provided. The third one is really looking at some of the different platforms. How do you know which ones to use? There's a lot. What goes into them? How much of a commitment is it? And Genevieve has been there, done that with all of them. So she has a ton of advice. The fourth and fifth ones, which will be in April, we will do an in-person event in March. All this stuff will be online, is going to focus on wholesale and white labeling. There's a lot of interest in how do you do that. And then the fifth one is really about discovery. How do you get found for e-commerce marketing? So with that, I would like we'll turn it over to Genevieve, and I'm like just pulling this stuff up here. So Genevieve has been running the Bitter Housewife. She founded it, but I'd like you to kind of give your background, but I just like saying Bitter Housewife because it's just fun. So it's, for 10 years, she has been running this e-commerce company, building this brand. And so when I tell you, like, she has literally seen it all, she has. She's been on every platform. She has made the mistakes. She's done the right things. And so her expertise is so valuable because she is in the trenches, right? So we're very grateful to have her and her time in the middle of busy holiday prep for her own business. And so I want to thank you for joining us. And then all of you who are in attendance, thank you very much for taking the time out of your evening to be here for this. So with that, Genevieve, I'm going to turn it over to you. And then I think you have controls. So we have a couple slides. They're really just as a guide for talking points. If you don't have paper and pen or whatever you take notes with, I suggest you get it because she's going to be sharing a lot of information that's not necessarily bulleted on the slides. So with that, I will stop talking. I will turn it over to you, and I'm excited to get going.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am going to share my screen real quick. First, a little bit about me. As Nicole said, my business is The Bitter Housewife. We make craft cocktail bitters in Portland. We do everything ourselves. We are a whole 3.5 person team. And we have been doing this business for a little over 10 years now. And we actually started not really intending to sell online. We had a website with the ability to purchase, but we didn't give it much energy, and it was always just kind of there. And then COVID hit, and we really shifted. I mean, we had been giving it some more attention before that, but that was a big shift for us. However, it is still only about 20 to 30% of our business. So we've got a whole mix of wholesale and distribution and all that kind of stuff. So as she said, I have done it all and understand all the different machinations of it. And I am still in the trenches of making my own product too. So I understand that idea of scaling and all of that. So today, as Nicole said, this is really just kind of the basics of really what are the questions to ask yourself before you even put the energy and effort into setting up an online shop, because it takes time and a lot of energy and pulling photos and everything together and writing all that kind of copy. And it's good to know what it is you're building and if it's really the right fit for you. Although with the quick overview of where everybody's coming from with businesses, I think it certainly makes sense. And please feel free to ask questions as I'm talking. I know it's easy for me, especially virtually, to get in the mode of just dump information, but don't feel like you have to hold questions until the end. Definitely do the little raise hand or just take yourself off of mute and start yelling something at me and I will pause. So, all right. So with all of that, let's jump into it. So why e-commerce? And I'm sure most of you have already figured out all of these things and kind of thought about them, but it is something, it's a way for you to sell your products 24/7. You don't have to worry about figuring out the right hours, when to open a shop, and you don't need anybody to be sitting there manning the shop either. So that's a bonus that, orders can come in while you're sleeping, while you're taking care of the kids, while you're doing another job, all of these things. And you have the ability to sell nationally. So you are not just, confined to your local area. Or have to worry about picking a location that gets enough foot traffic, or even if you're located in an area where there's not a lot of accessibility to retail. It gives you a lot broader reach. There is also a whole lot less barriers. You can run a shop by yourself out of your home with very little financial investment up front. You can put most of your energy and effort into your product, which is awesome. And it gives your business some legitimacy. If you have a product and you're doing events, you're selling at local bazaars, you're selling it at farmers markets, people always ask, do you have a website? Can I buy this online? And it's just, it's that, makes you seem like more of a real business to have that storefront. And that storefront helps you build loyalty. Those customers that you do connect with in person at events and farmers markets, they can now buy your stuff if they didn't make it to the market on Sunday, or they weren't able to go to the 2 or 3 holiday events that you do every year. And it allows them to share your stuff with their friends and family. Go shop this link. Here's, for people who are in different areas. But it is more than just a website. You cannot just build your shop and sit back and hope it all works and watch the dollars grow. The biggest part of doing an online shop is managing your fulfillment, getting those orders packed and out the door. And it is no small feat. So that is a big thing to consider. And we'll dive into that a bit more. But first and foremost, if you're taking orders, you got to figure out how you're going to get them to the customers. And just because you put up a website doesn't mean people are going to find you. So there's a lot of energy and effort put into finding the right customers. Where do you spend your marketing energy and effort and dollars? Who are the right customers for you to be talking to? And this is all stuff that we are going to go much more in depth in, both in the next session and then our last session too. That last one is really going to focus on marketing, how to get the word out. And engaging with your customers. There is, even though you are not sitting in a shop, you're going to get emails with questions about your product. You're going to get questions about shipping. You're going to have to deal with customer service issues. And then you need to keep those customers coming back and trying to find new ones. So there is still all of that customer engagement involved, even though you are not daily face to face with them. And you also have to manage that website. If you're doing those bazaars and you set up your display and you make it beautiful, it's that same thing. Your website is your display, especially a display that you are not personally there to show folks around and answer questions. So it is an ongoing process of keeping photos up to date and making sure links aren't broken. And as you grow, you're going to find that there are probably tools that are going to be helpful for you. So adding those on and really getting your systems in place. So, the thing that this is where I wanted to spend the bulk of the time, because this is when Nicole and I were having that first conversation about, what topics to cover, how to kind of frame this. I always go, whenever I talk to a new business owner, my questions are always like, well, what is it that you're building? What is your goal with this business? So, I really encourage you to think about these, not necessarily that they will say yes or no to e-commerce, because I think that having an e-commerce shop for most people is an easy yes. But before you put the energy and effort into it, really think about what it is you're building. So I encourage you to first think about, what does your ideal business look like? Is it something that you manage from home, just a few hours a day or even a few hours a week? Or are you looking to eventually build something that means your product is sold nationally in chain stores or specialty gift stores? Do you want to work alone, or do you want to have a team? Are you the type of person that really wants to manage everything, be involved with the sales and all of the production and all of the inventory management? Or do you recognize that some of those things are not what you want to be doing, and as soon as you can pass them off to someone else, you're ready to do it? These are all things to think about. What is that perfect day in your business 5 years from now? What does that look like? And how can you start to build a path that gets you there? And a big part of that is having these goals. And a lot of those goals are around money. How much money do you want to make or do you need to make? Is this business going to replace a job? Is this just a part-time thing because you love to make your product and you might as well sell it because you can't just keep it all in your garage? Are you supporting a family? Do you hope to support a family with the revenue from the business? So that is, I'm always surprised when I talk to business owners who already have products on the market, like in grocery stores or on gift store shelves, and they honestly don't know how much they eventually want to make. If they want this to be a business that only brings in a couple 100,000 a year, and that's fine and perfect, and it's really low key, or they want it to be millions of dollars in revenue and they want it to get acquired. And there are so many things in between. So I encourage you to think about what it is that you want your revenue to look like in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years. Where you want to be sold. Is it still just on your website, or do you eventually want to build wholesale into it? Because that also affects your pricing. Do you want to have multiple product lines? Do they all make sense together? And how far do you want to reach? You can have your own online store out of your garage that sells internationally. I know folks who do it, and it's still just a couple hours a day for them. So there are so many ways to look at it, but if you have those goals ahead of time, it really helps you to start to make the decisions that we're going to talk about in future workshops, like what platform makes the most sense for you. How much of an investment do I put into getting product photos done? Do I really need to be writing on a blog and optimizing my SEO? Or is this just I'm mostly doing in-person events and the online shop is just this little bit of extra income? There are so many different ways to look at it. And I always question, does your product and your pricing make sense for an online shop? The few of you who were able to do a quick overview of what you do, I think they all do. But, for instance, if you were doing some sort of frozen food item, that is really hard to ship. There's a lot of issues about dealing with shipping. And so you have to really understand that before you decide you want to sell online. Do you make something that's super heavy so that shipping is really expensive and becomes a big part of getting the product to people? Because that's a huge barrier for folks. Amazon has trained us all that shipping should be included in the cost or virtually free, and that it should show up within 1 or 2 days. So things to think about. But also, do you sell a luxury item that maybe just looking at photos online, people really struggle to pull the trigger and buy this item? There are so many not everything essentially works awesome online, but most products can be. I mean, we all saw Casper start selling mattresses online and everybody said nobody's going to buy a mattress online. And now how many different stores are there that do that, So there's always ways that you can overcome it too. And then what does scaling look like? That is always a good question to kind of have in mind as you start to get closer to your goals and hit milestones, what does that look like for you? If you have a goal of selling $200,000 in a year and you make gift cards that sell for $5 a pop, do the math of how many of those, what is your initial cost and your overhead to run your business? So how many different individual cards do you need to sell to reach that? Are you able to do that by yourself? Do you need to hire somebody? Because that gets into the cost. So not to say that you can't throw up a website and start selling and solve these problems as they arise, but I do highly recommend spending some time thinking about where you want to go and what are those huge barriers going to be, because that just sets, that gives you a little bit of a runway of, all right, if I grow the way I think I want to grow, in 6 months, I'm going to need a new fulfillment center, or I'm going to need more than my garage, or whatever that is. So that is kind of that building that foundation. Thinking as you start to set those goals for yourself with your revenue, with the amount of items you want to sell, with where you're taking this business, what will it look like? Most businesses start by boxing up all of their products and keeping their inventory, in their dining room and using the dining room table as the big shipping table. Or maybe you've got a garage and you can throw a folding table in there. But how long is that going to last for you? And how big are your items? How long, how much storage do you need? And then really thinking about the worst case scenarios of packaging. That is a big part of having an online business, is you've got to pack up all of those boxes. Do you have a delicate item that needs extra padding, or can you just throw it in a padded envelope? Embroidery is really awesome that way. You can ship really easily. I have to ship glass bottles. And special considerations too. Like, does your product, is it sensitive to temperature? If it gets too cold, is it going to be okay? If it gets too hot, is it going to be okay? Because undoubtedly, if you're shipping across the country in the winter, it will sit in a truck on one of the passes and it will get frozen. And in the summer, it will sit in a warehouse waiting to get on a delivery truck for a closer, and it will be 90 or 100 degrees. It will happen. So hopefully you've got stuff you don't even have to worry about it. You just got to worry that it gets there without breaking. But these are all those things to think about. And we are going to dive really deeply into the where and how to get your customers in that last session. But that is another huge part of it, is who is going to be interested in your product and how do you find them? How do you connect with them? What is it about your product that is going to convince them to give you their money instead of somebody else who's maybe making something similar? So there is a lot of energy and effort into that in that area, and really understanding who it is that you are selling to and where you're going to find them. And then, of course, customer service. Even though you don't have a face-to-face shop, you will still deal with customers regularly, whether they're just simply writing because there was a mix up in their order and they got the wrong thing, or it was damaged, or they thought it should be there by now and it's not. But they're also going to be asking questions, wondering if they missed a sale. If you do discount codes, it's not gonna work sometimes, or they're gonna lose them and they want to be refunded money. And there's a lot of just setting expectations too. As I mentioned before, Amazon has really changed the way people expect packages to be delivered, how fast they arrive, and how little you spend on getting them to your door. But it is okay to say and to really lay out the expectations of, we are not Amazon, we cannot do that for you. By putting policies up on your website that say shipping usually takes this many days, and charging flat rate. And you can even go in deeper and say each one of these things is handmade and it takes time. And then I pack it for you to make sure that it is not going to break. And, it is made by a real person. And it is touched many times by my hands, but also folks are always, there is going to be disappointment at times. So setting up your policies around refunds, around returns, just deciding what you are willing to give in terms of customer service and what you can't. And it doesn't mean you have to, every time somebody's unhappy, you have to refund them. It doesn't. Trust me. I sold a product for a while that was very challenging for folks, and we got a lot of people. It was a carbonated beverage, and we got a lot of people that would say, I didn't like it. I couldn't drink it. And my answer would be, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you didn't like it. We didn't make this product for everybody, but I cannot refund your money because you now have it. Give it to somebody else, give it away, pour it down the drain, and yes, it makes people cranky, but it costs money to make it. It costs money to ship it to them. We tried to explain what to expect as much as possible, and you can't please everybody. So I think that is also a frame of mind too, of kind of getting yourself there when you put your work out into the world. And people are going to have responses and reactions to it. Hopefully most of them are positive, and usually most of them are positive, but figuring out how to deal with the negative ones, both to make your life easier, but to also protect your mental health too. Setting these things up ahead of time is key. And just recognizing that is what you are opening yourself up to that when you open the shop. But
so Genevieve, I just
yes.
wanted to highlight, David,
Yeah,
your comment here, put in the chat. I think where we failed on some sales is we don't offer free shipping. Shipping cost for our product is typically $25 to $35, based on the length of the box. USPS charges an extra $8. Yep. The box is over 32 inches. The boxes are 40 by 44. Maybe it's time to offer free shipping and take the loss and profit. David, what is your product, out of curiosity, that you ship out? You might be on mute. Replica Star Wars lightsabers. All right.
Ooh.
That's a lot of approval from Jason, I think. That's great. Northwest Saber Syndicate. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, Genevieve, I wonder, that does seem to be, I know we'll probably talk about that some, but have you found a way to balance out potentially the loss of profit and make that up in another way? If you are, oh, you're famous, David. You've met a fan. Um, and
Shipping is, you know what? Shipping is a hard one. It is for a long time, it was the bane of our existence. We we had another, as I mentioned, we had another product line. We were selling carbonated beverages.
mhm,
So they're heavy. We're essentially shipping cans of water. They would explode if they froze. Luckily, heat was fine. It and the smallest order that we shipped was 10 pounds. And yes, it fit in a pretty reasonable size box, but we could not ship it across the country for less than $20.
right.
And even locally, it cost us at least 10. So we, you know, it, we decided to kind of split the difference and have customers pay for part of the shipping. And then we would eat the rest of it, but we had worked it into our costs. We had it as a cost of goods. So we were selling our product accordingly, which then also meant that it was more expensive. So there are a lot of ways to work around it. Some is just to really explain why shipping is so expensive and try to work with folks on that and convince them that it is worth it, or figure out how you can work it into your costs and maybe make shipping free or make a flat rate that they're paying a little bit of it and you're eating some of it. So I
Yeah.
see Paul has his hand raised.
Yeah. And David just commented, maybe offer free shipping on our orders over a certain amount. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. It's like, how do you play with that? Because yeah, shipping, it can just eat at your profit margin,
it
right?
totally can.
Yeah,
And
David.
I encourage you to test it out for a while too. That is something else, is you can try for a few months one way of dealing with it, and then try for another couple of months another way, and you will see it's always in the conversion rate. If people are getting to the shipping page and that's where they're dropping off, shipping is probably part of the problem. And if you see a big change in that conversion when you change your shipping policies, then you're onto something.
Mhm.
So, yes,
Mhm.
Paul.
I'm curious, excuse me, when you shared the shipping with the customer, did you position that in sort of a marketing lens of just off the top of my head, hey, we'll split the difference, or did you position in such a way, or did you just reduce the amount that they paid and eat the rest?
We didn't really position it overtly. We just said flat rate shipping, $10, and knew that we were making less of a margin if we were shipping it across the country, and we were more or less paying for it if we were shipping on the West Coast. But we would still get a lot of questions from folks. Why does shipping cost so much? And so then we had that ready answer for them, and to tell them that actually it's probably going to cost us significantly more than $10 to get it to you. But this is a cost that, we can eat and share with you. And some people kind of, then they get it and they go, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. No problem. And others don't, and they don't buy, and you can't please everybody. I think that's probably the other, hardest part of online is you're not going to please everybody. And you got to accept that and focus on the ones who get it and the ones who are willing to spend the money, support the small local business, support the crafters. It is a different customer, but you will, even though you are making something handmade, Amazon is still your competition in that people are going to compare you to what they can find there. Even if it's not directly related, they've set up this expectation of how quickly things arrive and how little it costs. So, like, we sell on Amazon, but we sell $1 cheap or $1 more expensive there than we do on our own website, and we offer free shipping. So, but then we get sales through Amazon and people don't bother to come to our own website and maybe even buy the same amount for less money.
And Maricruz, you said you have the same problem, but with delivery fees. Is there anything not to call you out, but I don't know if there was anything you wanted to comment on that or.
Because I know that with e-commerce, like I'm trying, set up a website to see if that would be easier for local customers here in the area. But moving out from Hillsborough to St. Helens, I lost like my clientele, right? So when you're driving over the hill over Cornelius Pass, I'm like charging, 20 plus, for delivery fee. And they're like, why is it so much? And I'm like, well, I'm actually using Uber rates. Like I just, grab the Uber app and I go to the location, put in the location. It's like $20, $45. But I try to like lower it down like $2 to $3 more. But it's like you guys are saying, shipping. I see it the same way as delivery, and I'm just trying to find like a better way to charge that fee without going or charging more than I should,
And remind us, what was the product again that you're working with?
So I do sweets, like chocolate covered strawberries, Rice Krispies. The majority is like setting up dessert tables for like weddings, sweet 16s, sweet 15s, and things like that.
So you're not just doing like a small box of treats, you're doing a big spread for a dessert. So, I mean, yeah, I think delivery, I think it's kind of the same thing. A delivery fee makes sense. You are taking, you're driving to wherever the location is. Your time is valuable and should be part of the cost, as well as gas and car, just general car maintenance. There is a standard federal mileage rate for that reason. And I think if you're coming and setting something up for somebody and you're charging $20 as a delivery fee, honestly, to me, that seems pretty reasonable. So but maybe if you keep getting pushback on it, then maybe you can ease that delivery fee into the cost of the setup, the cost of all of the sweets that they are buying. Maybe everything goes up 50 cents, and it helps to kind of cover that cost. But I think that's something you're gonna, decide for yourself whether you want to stick to that or whether you're like, okay, let me just work it into the cost, because they may, it may be that their people aren't thinking twice about that, but then they look at the line items and that's where they balk. But
that's interesting tip, David. Thank you. He's saying they offer local delivery for $20 up to miles away. Also a good deal, quite frankly, from St. Helens. And that's interesting, the choice, right, between shipping for 25 versus the drive. So, people will want to save the $5 where where they can. But yeah, the delivery fee, that's where it's interesting, right? Because that's where it's really looking at, which we'll get more into, is around pricing strategy. It's like, what is the sweet spot for your pricing strategy, right? So it's like maybe they won't bulk at everything costing $1 more and you make your $20 up. Whereas if it was a line item, they're going to complain about it, right? So it's all, there's so much psychology that goes into pricing, it seems like.
Oh,
But
there so is. And just to show you this, this presentation, like you think e-commerce, all sexy, we're going to talk about, beautiful websites and selling products. And no, really what you end up talking about is shipping and how to charge and what boxes to put things in and where to get boxes. It's true.
the best shipping, like to Dave's point, if you have a oddly shaped, you're at the mercy of the post office and the box dimensions, and that really adds complexity too. All right, so Genevieve, sorry, these are so great. Thank you for everybody.
Yes, no, and I've pretty much done with mine, and I wanted to open it up to questions. My little conclusion is really just my 3 top points to kind of, instill in everybody is to build the business that you really want. Think about what it is. Don't worry about what others think is a successful business, and work toward what you want that to look like. And always be planning for the next milestone. How is it you're going to get there? Whether it is simply just increasing next month's sales by $100, or it is, being done with doing the fulfillment yourself and moving it off on somebody else's plate in a year from now, or anything in between. So, yeah, that is basically the intro, just the starting all your gears turning about e-commerce. And I will say it again, it really ends up being all about the shipping and the customer service.
You had to experiment with a lot of different things to find what was going to work for you. So I'm curious, you probably have many examples, but what is like a hard lesson you had to learn sort of when you were trying things out in the beginning? Maybe it was around shipping, maybe it was fulfillment partners, that kind of thing, which we'll get into different types of things.
Yeah. And we've gone back and forth. Honestly, we just brought all of our fulfillment back into our own location. Before I go into a long tangent, Chrissy, I see you've got your hand raised.
Hello. So one of my questions is, if you could go back to yourself 10 years ago and start this process over, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
That's a great question.
That is a great question, and very much unrelated to e-commerce, but
it's all related.
I didn't have a clear vision of the business that I wanted to build. And I run this business with my husband, and we added a product line after about 1.5 2 years of business that neither one of us liked. We ended up selling that brand a couple years later. I think it was finalized in 2019, to start another product line that was more related to the bitters. And that one, while I stood by the product, I loved what we made. I was so glad when we finally said, this is not working for us, and stopped making it. But I think really all of that was us grabbing at straws of, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to grow? And without a really clear picture of where it was we wanted to go, other than just that we wanted to make enough money to pay ourselves. And, that's a decent, admirable goal, but there's more to it than that. In that, how hard do you want to work to make that money? And how much, extra, and really what does that mean in terms of how many individual items do you need to sell to make that work? So
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, of course. But back to Nicole's talking about fulfillment. Yeah. We used to do it ourselves. Then we got busy enough that it was like we had a part-time person doing all of our fulfillment, but we weren't quite at full-time. But a part-time employee was more expensive and harder to work with than a fulfillment center. And we found a fulfillment center that was really a unicorn, and it was awesome. But he wasn't able to make it work, and he shut down this summer. So we moved all of our stuff to a new fulfillment center, and it was a nightmare. It was a really hard transition. There were mistakes almost every week. Sometimes we would have a mistake every day for weeks. And we finally just said, we're bringing it back. We can't do it. It's too stressful, and it's our reputation on the line. We are not huge, so we're an odd duck for a fulfillment center. It's really hard to find outside fulfillment when you're only doing 100 or 200 orders a month. You need to be doing thousands. And there are a few places that will work with the small guys, but there are sacrifices. It's often expensive, and they are not as dialed in and streamlined as the bigger places where that is all they're doing. So, but there are lots of in and around Portland, and I know all of you guys are outside of Portland, but you're not that far. There are a lot of creative solutions. There are a lot of other businesses that have this same problem. So I have seen a few businesses come together and hire one person to do a full-time person to do fulfillment for 3 or 4 different businesses. And sometimes that's like the best solution, because somebody's got the warehouse space and you get to hire a person and that's all they do. But they're also your employees, so you get to make sure everything is the way that you want it. It's packed right, the right, stickers or postcards go in there, and they use the pretty paper and not all the bubble wrap and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. You're on mute, Nicole.
Yep, sure am. Yeah, I was wondering if we had if you guys have any other questions. One thing I was curious about for those who are looking at selling stuff online, helpful for us to know, maybe you're here to learn a lot of different things, but it's sort of like, what are your goals? Like David, I think about you have a very niche product as well. You have a very targeted audience. In addition to probably cost efficiencies, what are some things maybe you're hoping to kind of learn or expand with your e-commerce efforts? Same for Andrea or Angela or Maricruz, or Chrissy. So I think if anybody has anything to share about what they're maybe looking for, or looking to do or expand or learn, just so we can integrate that into
Yeah,
future sessions.
I think for me and my business, I'm looking for, I look at most of our stuff's probably going to end up being more custom type based on what we have that's available. Because we do have kind of a variety of things that we've kind of meshed into. I started this with my mom. But my mom is sick at the moment, so she's kind of backing out of it. So it's basically going to be me, which I work full time as well. So I'm looking at, how can I get the business out there, be able to, not really make a whole lot of money right away, but be able to support my crafting habit, and to, maybe eventually when I retire in about 7-8 years, that, we have something that's a little steady to go through. But, I work full time, so it's not something that I am going to have a lot of time to be able to just put towards everything. So that's kind of where I'm looking at for my business.
On the toughest job.
I have a thought to share, and I don't see how to raise my hand here, so sorry if I just interrupt. This is Mark with SBDC. So I deal with a lot of businesses, and the majority of them have an e-commerce side to their business. And what I share with them in our advising sessions is to develop, let the customer choose how they want their items shipped to them. Give them 3 or 4 options. Customers like options. If I want it overnight, okay, well, then you're going to pay for that. If you can wait 2 or 3 weeks, then shipping is going to be so much better. So the idea is to give the customer, I mean, how many times have you gone online and said, ship it to me, and they give you 3 options? Do you want it in 2 or 3 days? You want it overnight? Or do you want it, is 2 to 4 weeks okay? And let them choose the shipping option, in which, of course, the closer they want it to the day they order it, the more they're going to pay. And that's to your benefit. But if it buys you time that they say, oh no, 2 or 3 weeks, then they choose the shipping and not you. Just that's how I kind of deal with it.
Paul, you got a question here. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was curious, Angela, I was curious if given the circumstances, your mom is your partner, have you considered bringing in a partner at all? I mean, not that that's a simple thing, and not that it's not fraught with all kinds of upsides and downsides. I was just curious if that's something you've considered in your strategy.
I have not. Currently, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to go with all of this. Kind of getting kind of the basics of where do I want to go. Currently, with my mom, she was also helping make product and doing all of that. While she can still make some products, she's very limited now. So a lot of it, like I said, it will eventually be on me to do that support. I have not looked at thinking about partners. I'm still trying to figure it all out basically at this point.
Well, I think Genevieve probably is the best one here to give advice. In my experience, a bringing in a partner is probably the most significant decision that you can make, and never one to be made lightly. You can solve a lot of problems yourself with your product and shipping and marketing, things like that. Partner problems,
yeah,
well, a lot tougher. So I didn't mean to ask that to bait you, and I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, no worries. I work in human resources, so I can totally understand.
Okay.
Chrissy, I see you have a question, or
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions. So one is for like me, one is for my husband. So my husband is a woodworker. He does custom artisan woodworking on the side as a hobby, and he does have an e-commerce website which I built for him during the pandemic, for him to be able to sell product online, but things have kind of fizzled down since then. And it's something that he's thinking about revamping. And of course, we're aware of like product inventory fulfillment, like, we've done all of that. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on insight as to like, and I would consider him to be like kind of in the toddler phase of his business. Like,
is he listening?
No, actually, he's actually teaching a woodworking class right now as we speak, and so that's why he's not here. But I would say he's in the toddler phase of his business, where I help him to keep things on task. Anyway, so we have a site, we've got something going. My question is, like, if we were to kind of like take it to that next level, like what would you where would you have us go, or like what type of advice or guidance would you offer?
Good question. I mean, some of that is understanding, yeah, how you define toddler level and what the next level would be.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it comes down to marketing, most likely,
Yeah.
in that really kind of focusing on one or two areas where you feel like you can have the most impact in bringing new customers. And I think that, there's a lot of different ways that you can go. So it would be, I would want to dive a little deeper, but I think it probably comes down to understanding, that ideal customer, who they are, how you're going to reach them, and then starting to implement a couple of strategies to really reach out to them and see if they work, and see if that you start to see the growth that you want. And the other is potentially some tools for sophistication of just making customers' orders easier, making processing orders easier for you. But, a lot of that depends on really where, if you have any pain points. I highly recommend getting to the pain points before you start adding on a whole bunch of extra stuff. So.
When you say pain points, are you talking about like pain points within the business or the customer pain point?
Ideally, it's your pain points and
Okay.
not the customers, where
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, whatever. Processing orders takes too many steps, or
Okay. I see what you're
my
saying. Yeah.
inventory process is just way too wonky. I can't deal with spreadsheets anymore because I forget to update them and I'm always wrong, or,
Sure.
whatever. Yeah. Hopefully
Okay,
it's where you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I can't keep doing this anymore. I need a better solution.
Sure. Okay. So if I'm hearing you, like figuring out your workflow, whatever that is, and then once that kind of is like smooth sailing and you're cruising, then that would be a good idea to potentially expand, whether it's like adding on another product or something of that nature. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if and it to take it to the next level, it's, yeah, do you want more dollars? Do you want more products? Do you want the ability to fulfill orders quicker? There's a lot of different ways that can look, but
Okay. Do we have time for a couple more questions? I recognize that it's over an hour, so I want to be I want to be
yeah, I can do a couple more.
Okay. My question was related to, and this follows from me as well too, so I'll just stick with my husband's business for the purposes of brevity. What are your thoughts on if you have a product-based business, like he does like woodworking, like artisan stuff, it's selling on places like platforms like Etsy or Amazon. I'm curious if you've ever had an experience with that, and if so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. We're actually going to dive into platforms deeply in the third session.
Okay.
But yes, I think, because they all have their pros and cons. And again, it comes down to, what your goals are, what's most important to you, where you really want the business to go. But I sell on Etsy and I sell on Amazon and we sell on our own website. So I have firsthand experience with it all, and they're, all a love-hate. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. So we should probably let everybody head back to their lives for the evening. I know I've got a little guy to put to bed. So did you want to plug the next session, Nicole?
You're reading, I'm not on mute. I'm like, I'm on mute. You are reading my mind because I was just looking up So the next class, and we'll be promoting this, is scheduled for Wednesday, January 15th. We will be doing an evening. We're aiming to do evening and online. Hopefully it makes it a little easier for people. But yeah, right now we are looking at Wednesday, January 15th at 6:30. And that is going to be looking at kind of e-commerce strategies, looking at brand assets, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
and then the third one is tentatively Wednesday, February 19th at 6:30, and that's deep diving into platforms. So we will be putting event RSVPs. We'll get this up so people can sign up. Thank you everybody for taking the time. Thank you for all the interactivity and bringing your questions. Yeah. Thank you, Mary Cruz. Yes, we'll need to register again, just because each class is unique. So yes, but we will send an email to you once it's up and it's live. Paul, did you have another question?
Two quick things. One, in addition to the next session, Nicole will be putting out this session as a YouTube video in the next few days. So in case you weren't taking notes because you had a saber-wielding toddler behind you or something, this will be available. We encourage you to share this with your friends if you found value in this session, and I can't imagine you didn't. And then also sign up for the next session. And I would also say that on Tuesday, the 10th, and I think it's at 6, at Crooked Creek Brewery in St. Helens, the SBDC and GRO and CET are sponsoring a holiday beers, cheers, and I forgot a word. But it's all about small business that night. And so we would invite you down. Last year, I was astounded at the number of people I saw that lived 20 miles from each other that connected for the first time over business, and it meant business for them. So it's not a heavy program. It's just a celebration of small business. So Tuesday night, the 10th, next week, and I believe it's at 6. You can check Keep It Local or the SBDC sites, or probably even the GRO site, at Crooked Creek Brewery downtown. And just because it's a brew pub, they have a full menu now, and we'll be partaking of the menu. So join us.
Yes, there's an Eventbrite. I don't know if you have to register. I think that just might be to get a count. I was just trying to look really quickly to put a link in okay, I'm like quick thing here. Let's see. This is a shortcut, David. I'm putting a link in the chat. I just did a quick lookup. That's a SBDC Facebook page that links to it, but that will take you to, and it's a week from tonight. And I went last year. It was a good time. Real, just casual, nice, great networking. 6 to 10 p.m. at Crooked Creek in St. Helens, down on Main Street. So,
yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, again, for your time and your questions and your interest. Agree, Angela. And especially Crooked Creeks. They definitely have tasty beers. All right, everybody. Genevieve, thank you so much. We are so grateful and honored to have you leading us through the world of e-commerce. And I hope everybody has a great night, great holiday. Follow us on Facebook. And, if you have other questions and things you want to make sure we tackle in this series, just reach out and we'll
Definitely.
make
Yeah.
it addressed.
Cool.
All right.
See y'all.
Hope we'll see some of you in about a month.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.